What's up, guys? This is Derek here with the Z League. Today I'm joined once again with Nick here, one of our playtesters.
How's it going, Gus?
And we have had sort of resurgence over the last, or insurgence, I guess, over the last few months of new faces joining the league. We have switched this year to having our monthly events be free and things like that. So attendance is just kind of up, which is great. But with new faces and increased attendance, there's just more people who are unfamiliar with the cards. Or even if you're not like participating in the league a bunch, maybe you just watch the channel and you see different cards being played. And just are like, I don't know if I've ever seen that card before. There's a lot of them to see and learn about, so we thought it might be great to kind of go each set one by one and just sort of review them a little bit, kind of talk about like the general design space of each card, why it's there, what we're trying to do with it, and just kind of familiarize the YouTube space with the cards a little bit more. So I'm just going to kind of get right into this. The sets are a little bit, they're small, but it's not going to take a second to talk about all the cards, so I don't want this video to be 90 minutes long or something, so we're just going to kind of get started. First card on the list in the first set is called, this first set was called New Dimension, and card number 1 is Black Eradication Mastery. It's just gives you kind of your typical black damage buff like some of the other masteries do, but then your first successful black style attack that you perform each combat gets discard a card from your opponent's hand or discard an opponent's non-combat card in play. This just plays into kind of both sides of the typical black package. There's sort of the real removal heavy side, or as well as the kind of discard side, and this just gives you a little bit more flexibility in being able to kind of delete or eradicate, if you will, any version of your opponent's resources. It doesn't quite do as much damage as like a Trunk Saga, isn't as consistent with discarding cards or whatever as like a Self Saga or something, so it just kind of mixes them together and does something, just does a little bit of both and helps you kind of bridge the gap between some of the different aspects of the black card pool.
So,
Do you have anything
oh,
about that one?
so as Derek said, this is kind of an in-between the Trunk Saga, Cell Saga masteries. So this mastery is going to shine the most in an attacking deck that still cares about discard. So in a deck that can kind of do both discard and is more of an aggressive deck, that's where this mastery is going to kind of fit in. And I found it to be pretty powerful so far.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the stronger masteries that I think we've made. And I mean, the black card pool is just strong in general, so I think this continues to just stand out on its own. Speaking of more black cards, the next card in this set is Black Planet Destruction. You want to tell us about this one, Nick?
So Black Planet Destruction is a focused energy for 6. And if you've discarded a card from your opponent's hand this combat, you can also use it to stop an energy. And then it has a secondary that lets you discard a battleground or location in play. So what this really allows is black decks that maybe don't really care about specific battlegrounds and locations can avoid playing them altogether and just play this as a way to remove battleground locations they don't really like. And it being a focused energy attack makes it difficult to deal with. It's also a target for cards like Black Buffer Block or Black Calamity and Mastery and things like that. So it kind of fits in almost every single black shell. Basically, unless you have a specific battleground or location that you need to keep in play, this card is great and you should really consider it.
Yeah, I think Nick covered this one great. Just having on-card removal of the location or battleground is huge. There are some really, really powerful ones. And worst case scenario, it's just a good, like, focused energy for 6 life isn't anything to just ignore. And it can also be a block if you've done the thing black normally does anyway. It's just kind of a good card all around. And Black Realization is the third card in the set. This one's just a combat card where all of your opponent's floating effects now end. If you declared a Tokawaza, you may discard a card from your hand to force your opponent to discard a card from their hand, removed from the game after use. This one sees, obviously, a little bit less play than some of the other things, where you have to also discard one of your own cards. But being able to end your opponent's floating effects is relevant, especially now where we have had a recent card in the newest set get printed called Hercule's Megaton Punch, which for the remainder of combat your opponent's cards can't be affected by your like discard or removal and stuff. Realization will get rid of that, so that's pretty cool. But just having one more option to make your opponent discard a card that isn't attached to an attack or something like that too is pretty interesting too.
One other place it can come into effect if you're playing a defensive or a control-based deck, Gohan's Kick is going to be one of your big nemesis, and this can end the effect of Gohan's Kick, saying that you can't play stop balls for the rest of combat. So you can use this, and then you will have access to your stop balls again.
Yep.
So, our next card on the list is Saiyan Lineage Mastery. So, quick read: when entering combat, reveal a card with Saiyan Heritage only from your hand. If you do, and you're on the attack, your opponent draws one less card. If you're on the defense, it stops the first unstopped attack your opponent performs, and then it adds +1/+1 to all your Saiyan style attacks. So this mastery is really unique based on the type of deck you're going to build. If you are an aggressive deck, your opponent drawing one less card gives you that Saiyan card advantage, just in a little bit different of a way than Saiyan usually does. Um, and if you are a defensive deck, then this stopping the first unstop attack is a really powerful effect. You can kind of protect yourself a little bit in the early game, and it kind of negates the card advantage in that way. Whereas you're using your mastery to stop their first attack instead of having the additional card to do so. I think this mastery could see play in a variety of ways, and with the more NZ sets that come out, we're trying to focus on Saiyan Heritage only cards. I do think this mastery will just continuously get better over time.
Yeah, there have just been a number of Saiyan Heritage only cards. They keep coming out. Each set gets another one or two, and I think that this is just one of those cards that you just have to kind of keep an eye on, keep watching, because every time a new one comes out, it might be the one that kind of pushes it. Having sort of modal attack or defense modes is very cool, and then the little bit of damage buff of +1/+1 is great. We know the +1/+1 or +2/+2 off of Black Trunk Saga is already good, so giving that to your Saiyan cards is also just going to continue to be good. This is a cool mastery. Saiyan Execution is a very good card. Energy combat card. It's a Saiyan Heritage only. As we said, we've made a bunch of these. Energy attack doing 5 life cards of damage. Raise your anger 1 level. Empower 2. Remove an opponent's ally in play from the game. You may pay an additional X power stages for this attack. For every 2 stages paid, discard an additional ally. Remove it from the game after use. So, as you can see, this, if you've got some stages, can just wipe a table full of allies off of the out of play, which is great. You can remove the first one, which is super good. You can get rid of like their best guy forever, and then discard the rest of them. Sometimes there's also some tricky stuff you can do with this, where like you're playing, Saiyan Cell Jr. or something, and you use this attack to clear any of your opponent's allies, and then pay your own stages to get yourself down to being able to use the Cell Juniors that you have remaining in play, and you can kind of swing that disparity even further. This is just a very strong card.
Yeah, and the floor just being energy for 7, raise your anger 1 is, floors are important, cards like this, and that's a very good floor. Yeah. Also, Saiyan just having a ton of tech on all of its cards. This is just another, this is a good attack that you can play in any deck that also just has a variety of tech against ally decks. So definitely a sweet card. All right, next card is Saiyan Body Crush. Physical +3. If successful and the personality performing this attack has a higher power rating than the defending personality, your opponent's attacks cost +2 stages to perform. So the big thing with this card is the stage lock deck is kind of becoming more and more of a thing. So whenever you can use an attack and make your opponent have to pay stages for that attack, you're trying to do physical damage to them. So they're not always going to have the stages to do it. The personality performing this attack having a higher power rating is like a Saiyan trait. And most of the Saiyans are fairly strong. They have a fairly good, power rating. So it's pretty easy to turn that on too. This is a card that your opponent's going to have to block the majority of the time, or they might just be stuck not attacking the rest of combat.
Yeah, just having a decent attack, in general is fine, but having it also be sort of attached to kind of physical stop all is awesome. The stage lock thing is getting progressively better. There have been a couple cards that have come out for it in a couple of different kind of varieties, and I think this card, as old as it is now, is still absolutely worth keeping an eye on. It's one of the cards I think continues to be one of the stronger Saiyan cards we've printed. And that's the end of sand. We go now into orange. We got orange burst mastery. The first energy attack you perform each combat costs 0 power stages to perform. The first successful orange style attack you perform each combat deals +3 life cards of damage. And then once per combat after you perform a successful orange style attack, you can search your life deck for a drill and place it into play. This just does a lot of the things that orange wants to do. Orange energy has always been kind of an interesting deck, and is, as we've seen with the last couple too, is just continuing to get better as we make more orange energy support. And this one, just making your first attack free, means that you can stay in the game, performing attacks a little longer, assuming you can, block other physicals or things. But then doing some extra damage is good, and then setting up a drill in orange obviously is always good. That you have to give up playing like orange MBS or something like that to use this thing, so you do have a pretty big handicap to overcome in that sense. But I think the extra things that this card can do still give you a lot of options and a lot of extra power, while still being able to let you kind of do the orange drill thing. It's just a little bit different deck. It's definitely not the same kind of like stasis-y orange drill deck. This is the one that wants to be a little more aggressive and then use its drills as like support, as opposed to what it's real like as its whole focus.
One important aspect of this card that's not always immediately obvious, the drill does not have to be orange. So you can get Champion Drill, you can get Vegeta's Quickness Drill. Some of the most powerful cards in the game are freestyle drills. So a lot of options. It comes straight into play. You can use it immediately. There's a high power level on that effect for sure. Okay, next card is Orange Physical Resistance. So this is the conditional orange physical stop all. Stops a physical attack, gain 3 stages. If you have at least 2 or more orange style drills in play, or have performed a successful orange style attack, stop all your opponent's physicals for the rest of combat. It's of course limit 1, and it removes after use. So orange did not get the physical conditional stop all in the Fusion Saga like a lot of styles did, and this is our update to that. I believe that this card is a staple that should be played in every orange deck. I don't know any reason you would not put this in your orange deck. This is absolutely the kind of card that is just an auto include to me. When I build an orange deck, it is 100% in the deck.
Yeah, I think any version of an orange deck that you're playing, if you're playing the orange physical or orange energy like attack based deck, getting 1 successful orange attack in a combat is pretty easy to do. If you're playing the more drill focus like MBS style package, it's super easy to have 2 orange drills in play. Just having a full physical stop all, an extra one on top of the suite you would already have, just great to have. Then we have orange roundhouse. Endurance 3, a physical attack doing +4 stages of damage and power 2. If successful, any drills waiting to be played at the end of combat are played now. This, obviously featuring Krillin as well, pairs nice with orange searching technique, and is just in general, a physical for +4 with power 2 is decent damage in itself. It's got endurance, which is good. A lot of the orange physical stuff already has some endurance, so if you're playing the orange physical deck, you end up with just a lot of endurance. Having 3 more of it doesn't hurt by any means. And getting to pull those drills into play that you grabbed with searching technique is already cool. You might have a couple of those waiting to come into play. It's a nice little combo.
Yeah, it's certainly just a very simple card. If you're in orange physical, you're going to want this card. You're going to want this card in basically every orange physical deck. And there's some cards that come out later in Z sets that set drills aside just the same. So it's not just searching maneuver that we're there now. There's several options. So the card's just kind of improving over time.
Yep.
All right, the next style we're going to look at is Namekian, and this is Namekian Tactical Mastery. So just like all of these, your Namekian style attack still +1 life card, small damage boost. During combat, after the defending player has drawn their cards, play with the top of your life deck revealed. Once per combat, you can play it as though it was in your hand, and then at the start of your rejuvenation step, place the top card of your discard pile at the top or bottom of your life deck. So what this mastery allows is a lot of deck manipulation. Namekian is already very good at manipulating their discard pile and the top and bottom of their life deck. This kind of goes a different route with that. So you have the World Games Mastery, which draws from the bottom of your deck. You have the Cell Saga Mastery, which cares about the top of your discard. The Trunk Saga, which cares about the bottom. This cares about the top of your life deck. We've since printed a lot of cards that can manipulate the top of your life deck, and there were already several cards that could do that previously. So what this does is it counts as an additional card in your hand, basically, that can't be discarded by your opponent's card effects. So your opponent can't, Android 18 stare down whatever card is on top of your deck. You're gonna have access to it. And if you don't like the card that's on top of it, Namekian has a million ways to shuffle your deck, so you can manipulate it in that way. So what this can do sometimes is give you 3 or 4 looks at an extra free card, which is quite strong.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's not just having one extra card in your hand, it's having one extra card in your hand that could be like 6 or 7 different ones if you're just cycling through your deck. There's a ton of ways to shuffle your deck, a ton of ways now with new NZ cards to put them on top. There's plenty of ways to change what you're looking at on top of your deck and giving you a new tactical choice to make. Namekian Dominance then is next. This one's a combat card that raises your main personality to its highest power stage. It places the bottom 3 cards of your discard pile at the bottom of your life deck. And if you declare the Tokawaza for the remainder of combat, the base damage of all of your Namekian-style physical attacks is considered to be 4 when you use the physical attack table. So, the Namekians that exist in this game, most of them exist from pretty early in the show. We went to Namek in, essentially season 2 of 9. So it's been a while since there have been a lot of new Namekian characters. Even Cell, who's like from pretty middle towards the end of the show, his like early levels are still in B and stuff. So there are a lot of weak Namekians that exist. And unless you're like a really leveled up Piccolo, you're not going to be hitting very hard on the physical attack table most of the time. So this one just giving you a full power up to full, a free power up to full, as well as giving you some cards back to your deck, which Namekian already wants to do. But then just letting your physical attack table damage be not 0 most of the time is good. I think having 4 extra damage on attacks that might normally be doing 0 is awesome.
Yeah, 4 tends to be a lot when you're using the PAT, and Namekian tends to use the PAT a lot. So most of their physical attacks are just base plus 3. So if they're going to do 3 a good percentage of the time, so making them do 7 instead of 3 is very swingy. It's a big effect. So next card is Namekian Gutshot. This is a focus physical for plus 4 stages. Discard an opponent's ally play. It has Empower 3, and then if successful for the remainder of combat, your opponent cannot use Endurance against your Namekian style attacks. So this is a very simplistic card. It does one thing and it does it very well. Focus physical attacks. All focused attacks are always useful. Plus 4 is pretty standard attack. Discard opponent's ally in play. Namekian is very good at discarding allies. It's very good at keeping the board kind of clear, which it needs to do because, as we've said, Namekians aren't always the strongest, so they have to find a way to get the damage through. Empower 3 is a lot. It always feels good when you empower a card like this. If you're playing it with, say, the Tactical Mastery we just showed, this is going to do a focus physical for 4 stages, 4 cards by itself, a good chunk of the time. The if successful effect about your opponent not using Endurance, if you have a multi-form hand or you got a Mastery that's drawing you cards and you got a big old hand and you know that you're going to get your attacks through here, you can leave that turn them on so that your opponent can't use Endurance, and then the fact that you're hitting for 5 or 6, you're getting the full 5 or 6 every time. That's a big swing. So I've been very happy with this card overall.
Yeah, Gutshot's just a very aggro card. If you're going to be throwing some punches, bring Gutshot. Not much else to say. That takes us then into red, with red Unstable Mastery. This one you cannot win by most powerful personality victory. The first time you gain anger each combat, you gain twice that amount. When you reach 5 anger, you may advance or lower your main personality 1 level. Your red style attacks deal plus 1 life card of damage. That's, as you've seen from the other ones, kind of a common trend with this sort of cycle of masteries. It's a little bit of a damage buff, but choosing to go up or down with your levels gives you a little bit more control over just the number of actions and things you can do in a turn. Giving yourself access to, say you're on level 2, and giving yourself now access to your 1 or 3 powers is awesome. This works really well, obviously, with decks that have attacks on multiple levels so that you can go up and down using them. There's some that have like a good 4 and a good 5, and you can go 4, 5, 4, and kind of keep bouncing back and forth to use those. That's good. Getting double anger the first time you play it is also good. There's plenty of 2 anger red cards, right? So it's just 4 anger off of the first card you play. I think this mastery is pretty cool. Sometimes it's like there's not it's not quite enough, but that's sort of just kind of the red. Like if you're not MPPVing through anger, you really have to make sure that your deck is like needs to be leveling like that. So it just I think comes down a lot to deck building choice. You really need to make sure that you pick the deck that utilizes seeing multiple levels in different orders more often.
Yeah. This mastery is all about your MP. You need an MP that's got attacks on multiple levels, like you said earlier, or somebody like Boo who can rejuvenate cards on multiple levels. Just any effect that stacks correctly throughout the levels. Harudagarn's another good example. Mill one level, bounce up, and then do the attack mill again. Being able to flip between 2 to 3 levels that are really good at really synergistic is a really strong effect.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, red critical blow. Physical +4, raise your anger 1. If successful and you declare Tokuwaza, you can discard the top card of your life deck. If you do, draw a card. Remove from the game after use. So at this point in time, I believe this is the best red card in NZ, and probably the second best red card in the game. Uh, anything that draws cards is obviously very powerful. Red does not have a lot of ability to draw cards, so if you're playing a red physical deck, this card is in your deck. If you're playing MPPV, this card is in your deck. If you're playing energy, you could even consider still putting this card in your deck because drawing cards is that powerful. Anger, of course, is always useful. You can always use the anger, but this is an absolute auto include in any physical or MPPV deck for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's played the game before and reads this card will just be like, "Oh, that's good." This is definitely one of those that is just obviously good, remains good. I don't think could ever be made to be not good. Play 3 of this card every time you play red. Easy as that. Red Masenko, this one is a little bit more narrow. This one is definitely more focused on an energy deck. Energy attack doing 6 life cards of damage. Raise your anger 1 level. If your anger level is 3 or higher, gain 2 power stages, and damage from this attack is removed from the game instead of discarded. In this game, something that you're not going to see quite yet through just seeing it NZ1, we have introduced a mechanic called Transform, which gives you cards in your discard pile that have Transform on them can be played from your discard pile as though they were in your hand if you discard a card that matches the same style and card type. So like a red card with Transform, you could discard a red. If it's an energy combat, you bitch an energy combat, and then you can play it like it was in your hand. So having cards in your discard pile becomes just kind of increasingly better in a format now where that kind of keyword exists, because you might now have cards that you can play from your discard pile because of it. So this card just doing 6 life cards of damage is awesome. If you're playing it, say, like with Unstable at 7, there's easy ways to just make this do a little bit extra damage. But 6 life cards, period, is good. The fact it's removed from the game means it's not going to go in discard pile and be maybe transform fodder. It gives you a couple of stages, which means the attack is literally free as long as your anger is level 3 or higher. You get 1 anger off of this already, so you'd only have to be at 2 anger to use this and profit off of it, which is, again, in red, very easy to do. It just takes a little bit of sequencing, and it's just kind of techy. Being able to hate on the discard pile a little bit is good.
Yeah, discard piles are a big part of the game at this point. So anytime you can interact with them, remove cards from the discard pile, prevent cards from going to the discard pile is a very strong effect. I've noticed with this card specifically that red style energy decks that are focused on like world games based or unstable based or something like that, you tend to play this card a lot more often. Maybe explosion, it just doesn't quite make the cut due to explosion caring a little less about the cards being actually red. But red world games, for example, this card has been a great staple in that. I think this card is not seeing the play that it deserves to see because the effect of removing from the game the damage is a very big swing, very big effect.
I agree.
Alright, so the next style is blue, and this is Blue Divinity Mastery. So once per combat, when you make a successful attack with a blue style card, stop the next physical or energy attack your opponent performs. This can stop focused effects. While your opponent's anger is at 0 or 1, your attacks do +2 and +1 life card. So the big thing here is after you've made your attack, you announce that you are activating your mastery. We just usually say something like shields up, and it stops the next attack. The problem with these effects in the past has always been that your opponent just throws a focused attack and it just burns your shield. Well, this stopping focused effects takes that away. So you can do this after the first attack just to stop their first attack, or you can wait a little bit later in the combat if you want to try to hit a bigger attack with it. Blue is very good at lowering anger, so turning on the attack boost is very easy to do, and it's very easy to do in a style that could always use some damage boosts. You can play this in a physical deck, you can play this in an energy deck, you can play this in a hybrid deck. I know the PUR deck that's been floating around. This is my favorite mastery for it. I think this mastery is very good at a lot of things, and it's very well balanced.
Yeah, I like this mastery a bunch. I think blue is kind of already a hybrid color in general. A lot of its kind of best cards are on both sides of the table, so a lot of decks end up kind of playing both, at least more than other colors do. So I think this having damage buff for both types of damage on every attack is just helps kind of bridge that gap a little bit, giving yourself a free defense shield that can stop focus attacks is great. Not a lot of cards can do that. Just a cool mastery. I think it's awesome. Blue Overpowering Aura. Speaking of awesome cards, I like this one a lot. Endurance 3. This is very welcome in blue. Stops a physical attack. Lower your opponent's anger 2. If your opponent's anger is 0 or 1, raise your main personality to its highest power stage and prevent 2 life cards of damage from your opponent's attacks for the remainder of combat. So you got a block that stops you from taking more damage later. Life cards means it kind of also helps. It stops a physical, but then can also kind of help prevent from energy attacks. But also, if you get pushed to 0, you can prevent damage that way. You get to lower your opponent's anger, and then if they're at a low anger, that's getting a full power up is great. Having a 0 or 1 anger after lowering it 2 is super easy to do. Some decks just never even gain anger, so sometimes this is just always on. I think this card is awesome. If I'm going to play a blue physical block, this is very typically one of the first ones I pick.
Yeah, I think that this is one of the 2 best blue physical blocks in the game. I think you could argue it's the best. It's pretty much an auto-include in blue decks for that reason. Your opponent having to have more than 3 anger for this not to be active is pretty rare. So definitely a strong effect. The next card is Blue Crushing Blow. So this is a focused physical for +3. Lower your opponent's anger 1. If your opponent's anger is at 0, damage from this attack cannot be prevented. If successful, your opponent cannot gain anger for the remainder of combat. And this card is unaffected by your opponent's Goku Sensei. So there's very few ways to interact with Goku Sensei in this game. So this does that. This is going to be very good in like Tough Enough, especially because there's a lot of Goku Sensei running around in Tough Enough. Focused physicals are always useful. You get through a lot of the Omni block decks. Certain styles like Black and Saiyan are more Omni style block decks than others. You're lowering your opponent's anger 1, and then if their anger is at 0, again, blue's very good at lowering anger, so that's going to be at 0 a lot. The attack not being able to be prevented is going to happen a lot, and then your opponent not being able to gain anger for the rest of combat. A lot of decks are going to struggle with this. This is very good against MPPV. This is very good in Tough Enough against a lot of decks. It's kind of narrow in its uses, but the times that this card is good, it's going to be very, very good.
Yeah, like Nick said, it's kind of narrow sometimes where some decks just don't care about anger and whatever. But the decks that would have a Goku Sensei, of course, are going to care about their anger, so being able to stop those is great. Another little thing that you can do that's nice with this is with like Blue Biting Drill or things like that, where you need their anger to kind of stay at 0. You can set their anger down, and then they can't get any more for the remainder of combat, so you can kind of string along the rest of your lowering your opponent's anger while they're already at 0 cards to trigger effects like that. It's just kind of a cool card. It covers a little bit of grounds that blue wants to cover already. It does decent damage. Focused is good. It's not like an auto-include card. You definitely would want to build this for a deck that would care about that kind of thing, but there are decks that do, and it does combo nice with a couple other cards that exist. Super Saiyan Retaliation is next. It is a stop a physical or energy attack. The next attack you perform this combat gains any secondary and or if successful effects of the attack you stopped with this card. Remove from the game after use. This card, I think, should still see more play than it does. An Omni Block that gives you any of the effects of the card that you just stopped on your next attack is very cool. The biggest downside of this card is that it's a combat, which means you play a block on your opponent's attack and they can sphere it. That's super unfun to get a block sphered. But if this succeeds and you're also a deck that wants to attack, having just a Omni Block that gives you upside of whatever your opponent just played is very cool.
Yeah, so this is one of those cards that you're going to be rewarded if you're more in tune with the games and in tune with the different decks and what people are playing, right? Because, you're going to be in a spot where this might be your only block and you're going to get hit with 2 or 3 attacks, and you're kind of weighing which one of these is the one that I want the secondary / just successful from. If you're playing a red deck, you want to hit the critical blow or the axial kick or, something powerful like that. So when you can set this card up, it feels really good. It does take a little bit of setup, but on its face, it's still just an Omni Block, which is just fine. A lot of styles don't have Omni Blocks. Red, for example, does not have a good Omni Block, so I like to play this in red decks sometimes. But it definitely should see more play than it has so far.
Yeah, there are a couple of things where it makes super obvious sense too. If you're getting kind of cheeky with it, like you could play a black deck using a card that exists in one of the future NZ sets called Black Imposing Drill, which lets you see your opponent's hand. They play with their hand revealed, so now you know what all of their attacks are. Black already kind of cares about its Omni Blocks, and having another one doesn't hurt. You could play this, speaking of seeing hands, you could play this in like a Bardock deck where you can always see their hand and know what they have to, what your best kind of thing to block is going to be. You can play this after getting a stare down or confrontation handoff, things like that. So there's a bunch of ways that this would kind of combo into other cards that exist that make it a little bit better even than it is just printed on paper.
Straining Key build-up move. So Endurance 4, which is a nice amount of endurance. Set your MP to its highest power stage. Card effects and floating effects cannot alter cost of attacks you perform for the remainder of combat and cannot stop you from gaining stages. Discard the top 6 cards of your deck. Your opponent skips their next attack or attacks phase. So, in theory, what this card is good at is getting around the oppressive floating effects. So cards like Sand Beef, which is good at not letting you gain stages and things like that. So I have not found a lot of specific uses for this card yet. It does make sense to me as a Sensei deck card to counteract Sand Beef, to counteract the Stage Lock deck. Anything like that that's going to make you pay more for your attacks, this card would be super useful in. Your opponent getting to skip their next attack phase is pretty reasonable. That does mean you can play this, you can power up to full, and then you can use your new stages to do whatever you need to do, even if your opponent's just going to knock you back down to 0 with a cross punch or something right after. So you're guaranteed to get to power up to full and get some sort of effect while you're at full, which that can also be super useful.
Yeah, Nick's kind of right on the money with this one. Endurance 4 is just great in general. That's a huge amount of endurance. It's good to have that, though, because the card itself is kind of this one is a bit of a miss in all reality. But there's definitely times where pulling this off to stop a beef turn or something like that can be huge. Getting to use those those new gotten stages because your opponent had to skip is always welcome too. It's definitely kind of a cute card. You really have to line it up right, and just like any straining card, it's kind of only good sometimes. But there are times where it's useful. I might see running a copy or two of this. There's a Chaozu that exists that we've created that kind of lets you fetch straining cards out of your deck. this card might be like a decent like one of or whatever as just a target he could pick. There are times where it might be useful, but it definitely doesn't see a ton of play. Not one that you'd have to like intimately familiarize yourself with for sure. Double Elbow Slam is another card that doesn't see a ton of play, although I think this card is more useful than the last one. Endurance 2 is good. Endurance is always great. Physical attack doing +4, good damage. If successful, discard up to 2 allies in play. If stopped, you may deal the damage this attack would have dealt to one of your opponent's allies in play. So just giving you a little bit of kind of control over like where to put damage. Having your choosing to not have this damage. Like if your opponent stops this, it still is going to deal damage in some capacity. Their MP won't take it or whatever, but that's kind of okay. Sometimes against a deck that would have allies because it keeps them potentially from being able to use them. But now you can use it to take some stages off of one of your opponent's allies, which is good for them not being able to like redirect damage to them as efficiently. It's just, I think this is a decent card. It's a little bit weird in its implementation of its effect, but a card that kind of lets you do damage, quote unquote, even if it's stopped, is always kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, to me, this card always made sense as a Devastation Drill card. So if I'm playing freestyle physical beats, I got my Oops Crushing Dives to help answer allies, but there's not really anything else to answer allies in the freestyle physical shell. So I would play both of those cards, that and this would be my kind of secondary ally removal / okay, well, if they stop it and you got a dev drill out, then maybe their ally takes 11 or 12 stages and you're still getting some life cards out of this. So, it's a valuable card in very specific circumstances. If your deck is really, really bad against allies, I could definitely see you playing this. Or like I said, the freestyle shell, I think this card should just be in that shell most of the time. Alright, next card is Big Getty Star. It's a non-combat. This is a meta cooler only card. When it enters play attached to your MP, once per turn, you may discard the top card of your deck to search for a meta cooler clone and put it into play at 3 stages above 0. While this card is in play, your drills do not leave play when you advance a personality level. Okay, so Metacooler, if you guys are not aware, is a big about protecting his drills. He's a very drill focused MP. The Metacooler clone we'll see a little bit later, and you can kind of put together what exactly they do. But the big thing with me for this card is that when you advance a level, you do not lose your drills. So the answer to most drill decks, and the easiest way to deal with drill decks, is stuff like Freeze's Deception and Aura Clash type effects. So if you've got this card in play and they're gonna Aura Clash you or they're gonna Deception you, that's gonna get rid of all your drills. This will stop that from happening. So Metacooler's power is like if the top card of your discard pile is blue, then they can't get rid of your drills. So he is a very drill focused deck that wants to protect his drills, and this is just another way for him to continue to do that. The clones coming out is a good way for him to get some more stages and help him be able to use his attacks when he wants to. So again, we'll see what the clones do here shortly, but I think if you're going to play Metacooler, then this is a pretty reasonable card to put in your deck because again, Metacooler decks are going to be super drill heavy, and that last line of text is going to be very important.
Yeah, there's a lot of text on this card for like a sentence that is really the part that like sells it. You could kind of read just the last sentence and be like, oh yeah, I'd probably play some Metacooler. Just being able to protect those is so important to that strategy. As he said, the Metacooler clones kind of help with that, but being able to get one of those, basically getting an ally every turn at the cost of just one card from your deck, is pretty cool too. There's a lot of cards that exist in this game that will fetch you like an ally. Having kind of go get an ally on a stick is pretty neat. Even though it grabs just a Metacooler clone, it's still a whole ally worth of stages. It works for cards that need an ally in play. Just useful. Bountiful Harvest. This card is a combat card that when you play, you choose one effect, you search your life deck or discard pile for a Tree of Might and place it into play. Or you remove an energetic fruit attached to your MP to advance a personality level. You can't win by MPPV for the remainder of the game. So, this card exists because energetic fruit is a card that is not great, and Turles wants to eat the fruits. So we wanted there to be a little bit of a card that wants Turles, or any deck really, to be able to utilize kind of the famous scene of eating the fruit of the Triomite to get strong. That card means that the energetic fruit normally lets you need less anger to level, but this one, just being able to discard it to just pop up a level is cool. Or more often too, this card is also just search your deck or discard pile for a location, specifically the Triomite, and play it. That isn't bad either. A little damage buff from the Triomite plus a Drill Searcher at the start of each combat is cool. People play like Gohan's Nimbus Cloud and things like that. Often that card does draw a card, so that's, a little bit better there. But this one going and getting a card just kind of like that one does, it's still pretty good. It's a little narrow with the use of the energetic fruit. There's not a lot of decks that are going to take that angle. But if you do have that attached and need a level, this is a nice way to do that too.
Yeah. If your deck's running Triomite, it's a pretty reasonable include. If you want to put this as a one of in there as a way, there's a lot of card effects that let you search for combat cards that do not let you search for battlegrounds or locations. So this is a way to get Triomite into play. Most Triomite decks very, very much want Triomite to be in play. So having, calling this a fourth copy of Triomite is pretty reasonable to still. And like I said, with cards like Fatherly Advice, Expectant Trunks, Krillin's Concentration, there's a lot of ways to get this card out of your deck or out of your discard pile that wouldn't just be able to put Triomite into play. So I think that's going to be the majority use here.
Yep, and the fact that we'll play it from your discard too is good. It means you don't have to hit the location or battleground from straight in your deck. It means if your opponent's already replaced your Tree of Might, you can kind of go replay it. That, like Nick said, having the Tree of Might in play is really important for the decks that are running that. So just kind of helps those out. Hey, look.
This is the Metacooler clone. This is, of course, a villain ally. It is in D, or it's in C all the way up, which is a reasonable power level. So if your MP is Metacooler, you can include up to 6 copies of this in your deck. So as Derek said, chaining them off earlier is helpful when you have 6 of them. So its power is stop a physical attack, or you can discard it from play to put it, search your discard pile for a drill and put it into play. So if your opponent is using physical attacks, this is a good way to keep some extra blocks around, play some defense. Again, the Metacooler deck is very defensive, very drill heavy deck usually. If they're not playing physical attacks, or if you've got plenty of physical defense already in place, you can just discard this and just get a drill from your discard pile and put it into play, which again, Metacooler is very good at protecting. So it's pretty useful in the specific deck it goes in. Like you're probably not playing this in a lot of other ally decks or anything, but it is very good in Metacooler. And I mean, I could see some scenarios where you might try it with other MPs as well.
Yeah, having a block on an ally doesn't hurt. It's kind of just a repeatable block in your hand as long as the ally doesn't leave play. The one problem with this card is that you have to be able to use an ally to use it. It's not one of those where you can use it like regardless of your power level. So you have to have already been hit to 0 or 1 to be able to pull this off. But from there, having physical blocks online once you're already at 0 is pretty good. It will prevent a lot of damage in that capacity, more than it normally would, even if you could just do this like as a normal block timing kind of thing. Having 6 of these might be a little redundant, but they're infinite Metacoolers, man. You got to have the army of them, and your Getty Star being able to grab a fresh ally every turn, like I said, is good, especially one that comes with a block or maybe a drill. So I think this card's pretty neat. And that takes us then to our final 25th card of NZ1. This is the Crusher Core. That is real big there, sorry. Jeez. If Turles is your MP, this card counts as 5 personalities for your card effects. The Turles MP has an attack that says +1. It does +1 stage for each personality in play. So you get the whole Crusher Core, which is 5 guys, so he counts as having 5 extra dudes in play. At the start of your turn, if Tree of Might is not in play, you may search your life deck for 1 and place it into play. If Turles is your MP, the Crusher Core does not need to be in control of combat to use this power. So you can just use these kind of at the start of your turn, whether you have the stages to normally use an ally effect or not. To get your Tree of Might to set up your search your deck for a drill to start a combat effect. It is specifically your turn. So if you get this out on, say, like you play this on your turn 1, you don't get to go your Tree of Might that turn. And then if your opponent enters, you don't get to get a Tree of Might that turn. But going into your second turn, which is the first time you would have this card in play at the start of a turn, you can then start the kind of Tree of Might combo from there that this deck would want to have. A lot of the Turles kind of engine is to use this to get Tree of Might, to get something like Dev Drill or Broly's Evil Drill or something like that to kind of set up getting extra cards in hand or doing extra damage. Having the Tree of Might plus the Dev Drill is an extra +7 stages. Having Crusher Core on your power, that means that your power is hitting for +7 because your MP, this card, and your opponent's MP 7 +7, so you're hitting for 14. So you can kind of set up this like huge Alpha Strike combo with Turles because of this card. But it's just a little bit slowed down now, where it is at the start of your turn. It used to be at the start of combat. Of course, as you can imagine, that kind of proved to be real good. So it's just been slowed down a little bit, but it's still pretty good at setting up the kind of kill box that it works with.
As we said earlier with earlier cards, decks that play Tree of Might want Tree of Might in play. It's not a city in turmoil kind of defensive location or battleground. If you have Tree of Might in your deck, you want Tree of Might in play all the time. So it's very useful for that sense. It's also good if your opponent gets rid of your Tree of Might, that you put into play with these guys. You can go get the second copy and put it into play your next turn. So Tree of Might kind of always being in play if you're going to be on the I'm going to play Dev Drill and nothing else strategy. That you're always going to be able to have your Dev Drill in play. And if you're on a more freestyle version where you've got a bunch of drills and you're Champ drilling and your Broly's Evil drilling, it can be very powerful either way. So obviously this is an auto include in Turles. I think that this kind of makes Turles a relevant personality in the game, which is great because Turles is cool, and he in his score only version he was not really relevant to the game at all. So very happy with where this has turned out.
Yeah. Well, that's the first 25 cards released for NewZ. The cards included in New Dimension. We will keep going with these videos in the coming days, where we cover the remaining 6 at the time of recording this video sets, and just kind of familiarize everyone a little bit more with these cards. I hope this helped with just kind of introducing some of these cards to some people. They've been around a long time, but there are still folks that haven't kind of dove in. They kind of deal with them because they get played like in events and stuff around them, but just having a moment to kind of unpack all of it together, I think is pretty helpful. So I hope this is useful information for those of you watching. If you made it this far in the comments, you can tell me what your favorite card in the set was. And I hope we see you around for the review of NewZ Set 2.
Have a good day, guys.